So we're back working on this 68 Charger with the speedometer issue. Now this vehicle I've discovered has this GPS 50-2 bus interface, and it has this bus interface module. Now it does say in multiple places on here the GPS 50-2 cannot be linked daisy chained to a BIM-01-2, which is what is in there. These two units cannot talk to the display control box at the same time. But this bus interface module has no way to connect to the actual Dakota Dash. This Dakota Dash Series 3 doesn't make any mention of using a bus interface module. This is probably 20 years old, this digital dash. And it actually has a standalone speed sensor. Now, I didn't notice when I was in there fixing the fuel gauge if there were wires connected to this. Now, there's a wire going from this to the OBD2 port, and I think they might have expected that to work, and it doesn't. The OBD2 port is for read only, basically. So I'm going to find out if there's a signal or if there's any wires connected here. And I'm also going to find out if there's any signals coming off of these Speed 1 and Speed 2. There are no wires connected to that. So I'm going to try to see if there's signals coming out of there, what they look like, digital, analog. I would imagine they're digital. Now this uses a 3-wire Hall effect sensor. I know that doesn't exist, so if this is not there, I'm sure the wires are not there. There is a wire connected to the cruise terminal, this one here. But that's for standalone cruise, optional speed and cruise control outputs. So there's a Speed 1 and Speed 2. I'm going to lab scope those to see if there's an output signal. Of course, I have to drive it with GPS satellite movement. And it says the speed signal should be connected to speed send. So that's where we're going to go. So looking under the dash here, you see that Dakota digital GPS unit. There are no wires connected to Speed 1 and Speed 2, but there is a gray wire connected to cruise, and I don't know if that's going to the cruise control. I see it here. I'm going to have to access that module, which is behind the console here. You gotta get at it through the top of the console, and I'm going to try to look in there with a borescope before I take all this console back apart again, see if there's any wires connected to that speed signal. So we're looking for a wire to be connected to the SPD SND, and there is you can see it, there's nothing connected to those 4 terminals for the speed sensor. So I don't know where that gray wire goes. Hopefully it goes to the aftermarket cruise control. Yeah, there's nothing connected to those wires. So I have to pull this console off again, but I'm going to check to see what kind of a speed signal I'm getting out of that unit. So I managed to pull this unit down, and that gray wire was actually connected to Speed 2, but it doesn't go to the dash unit. You can see the terminals in here, the screws, and the screw in the top terminal. Looks like it's still, no, I'm wrong. It was connected to Speed 2, or it was connected to, I backed this screw out, but I didn't touch, and I backed this screw out. I was doing it from underneath the dash, so it was hard. I pulled this down. It was MAC-tacked to the dash. So I'm going to put that gray wire back into the cruise upper terminal there. Then I'm going to put 2 leads in these 2 wires, and I'm going to lab scope them to see if there's signals on those wires. So I got a 4-channel lab scope hooked up using 3 channels. I got the yellow trace to Speed 1, the green trace to Speed 2, and the blue trace to the gray wire, which was connected to this cruise control output, and a good ground. So now we're going to go for a road test because I need a GPS signal. I can't just spin the wheels, and see if we've got signals on this lab scope here. That's not a good start. I would have expected some kind of a signal on some kind of a voltage level. None of the circuits have any voltage on them. There's a blinking LED on there. I'm going to get the manual and read what the LEDs. There was a display. See, there's a blinking LED under there. I should go read the code. Well, once we start moving, we've got a speed signal on the green trace. Nothing on the yellow, nothing on the blue. And it's flashing SPD on that display, but we do have a speed signal on the green trace. Now, I'll have to read the manual to find out what SPD, probably speed sensor calibration, but the green trace is connected to speed 2. Yeah, the yellow is speed 1, green is speed 2, and blue is the cruise. I keep reading in the instructions here that this GPS 50-2 cannot be connected to any BIM 01-2 module, and it is connected. But here it says, but that's for an input to this thing. And we don't have an input. Also using a BIM 01-2 series. So that BIM module is not required as far as I can tell. I don't even have it plugged into the DLC right now. And here it says the output on speed 1 should be a square wave. Speed 2 is a sine wave. And I have a square wave. Cruise control, speed 3, I have nothing. I gotta double check my wiring. So I've disconnected that BIM module, both the input and output. And I'm going to see, and I do have them connected, yellow to speed 1, green to speed 2, and blue to speed, or the cruise control circuit. So we're going to see if we get a signal now with that. That's interesting. With the BIM module disconnected, there's no indication of that SPD message on there. Let's get out and drive this thing and see. We got speed 2 signal. Now there's a possibility that that gray wire, which I don't know where it goes, is grounded. So I think I should have brought a pair of tins or a pair of side cutters to cut that gray wire. I'm gonna go back to the shop and see. Oh, the mirrors on this thing suck. So I've cut that gray wire because I have no idea where it goes. We'll see if we get a signal on the other 2 circuits, or at least the blue one. No, we don't. We just get a speed signal on the green trace. The frequency of that signal, I'm sure it can. Might be 4,000 pulses per minute. Have to convert that to frequency in seconds. Well, if we connect speed 2 to the speed input at that dash control module, the speedometer should work. This thing really doesn't need a speed signal for the ECM, because the ECM, other than clocking mileage internally, doesn't really care about the speed. There's overspeed limiting maybe, but that's about it. It's not controlling a transmission, it's not controlling cruise control. The cruise control unit is standalone. I don't know why we're not getting a signal out, unless this GPS interface needs to be calibrated or So I moved the channel 2 0 line up, and I realize now that it is an AC square wave. You can see this is the 0 line right here. So it goes to about 6.5 volts positive to about 6.5 volts negative. If I put the cursors on here and measure the delta time, or it should give me the frequency between one phase. Let me see. Gotta pull this up. Delta time, frequency, 23.79 hertz. We'll see what that calculates out to. So it looks like this unit needs to be customized. It says see page 17 for the speed output options to select from. So let's have a look at that. So it says all Dakota digital gauges can use either speed 1 or speed 2. Other brands of speedometers may only read one of the two signals or two outputs. Those brands that normally ship a 3-wire speed sensor will use speed 1, which is digital. Those brands that normally ship a 2-wire speed sensor will use speed 2, which is analog. OEM speedometers tend to use speed 1. Well, this Dakota Dash came with a 3-wire speed sensor, which would be digital. Now we need to enable speed 1 and cruise outputs. So this manual is so confusing because it says without a BIM 1-X, with a BIM. So I'm not sure how this thing is configured, but we're going to try and see if we can go into the selection. You have to press and hold a button on that unit while you turn the key on, which is nearly impossible when it's mounted. And it has to be mounted against a solid surface so that it can't be hanging free, because it has an accelerometer in it and a yaw rate sensor in it. But that's secondary. We got to mount it afterwards. I'm going to try and set this up. So I reset the unit to base values, and I've still got no speed signals on the two square wave ones. Got the gray wire disconnected, but no signals on it. I don't know where that wire was run to, what it was connected to. It is possible that it's grounded. I'm going to check it for continuity to ground, and it may have damaged the unit if it's grounded. They may have ran it as a speed signal into the 05 Dodge Ram ECM. I don't know. But I'm going to connect the green trace circuit, which is speed 2. I'm going to connect that to the speed input at the Dakota Digital Dash module and see if we can get the speedo to work at least. So here is the acronyms used for setting up this GPS 50-2. So you must hold the button on the unit, turn the ignition on, and the first thing that'll pop up is C. And then you hold that button and you'll get into the sub menu, and we need to turn BIM off. I did the reset RST, assuming that would reset at the base unit, but all that does is reset the module orientation to relearn which direction is forward, and which I'll have to do again. So I'm going to try this one more time to see if we can enable that, because I got to make sure that it's not BIM enabled. I still don't understand why in one place it says you can't use a BIM module, and then another one it says BIM enabled. This is so freaking confusing. So it turns out when you're in the calibration for the speedo, you can set it at 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 54,000, or 128,000 pulses per mile. And it outputs signals on those speed sensor wires. And as you can see, we have a signal on the green one, but no signal on the blue or yellow. So, and it does this during this calibration mode. So if I select a faster frequency, 8, you can see it's faster now. And you hold hold the button to select that value. And then it goes to cal, which is the next feature here. And the submenu is for calibrating the lowest speedometer accelerant override allowed. Anyways, so I'm going to connect that green wire, or the green circuit, which is speed 2, because that's the one I have a signal on. I'm going to connect that to the speedometer input at the instrument cluster and see if I can get this thing to work. So one good thing about this is I can test this sitting still, because it'll be outputting a signal and the speedometer should read. Well, at 4,000 pulses per mile, it reads about 20. So I'm going to try changing it to 16,000, see if I can get it to read 60. Actually, this instrument cluster can be calibrated to different speed signals rather than changing it, but I'm going to go 8 and see if it doubles it to roughly 40. Well, it's 35. Maybe I'll try 16. So it's set at 8. Now it's 16. We press and hold the button and that'll configure it. Now we just go to end, press and hold the button. Okay. Now to go road test it, which should be fun. Well, that says 20 miles an hour. I still need to calibrate the speedometer to get the odometer to display. But we got to do that with the switches, and I need a measured mile. Now I know from my side road, from my driveway to the end of my side road is 2.2 kilometers. But I don't know exactly a measured mile. I'll figure it out. Well, I think I got it calibrated. Digital display is reading in kilometers, but the needle is in miles per hour. No, actually it's not. Because they both actually, that's 20 miles an hour. Yeah, 27 kilometers is about right. So I'm going to fire up the GPS on my phone and compare actual speed at 60 miles an hour. Okay, so I'm going to use a screen recorder and this new app that I just downloaded because I thought I had one. Unfortunately, I can't record two screens at once, but I can read this in miles per hour and the speedo in miles per hour to see whether it's accurate. That's pretty close. Well, that's 14 miles an hour and it's reading about 18. Let's judge it at 60 miles an hour. Now with this app I can figure out where one exact mile is, because that's how we calibrate this instrument cluster. There's got to be all this traffic now.